So thank you and welcome back. We will now take the presentation from Commander Kofi Amponsah-Doju, and you are welcome, sir, and the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lawrence, and good afternoon to all our participants. Kofi, my apologies. A second. I hope you can hear me.
Loud and clear, sir.
Okay. So, I'm Commander Kofi Amponsah-Doju, a naval officer and also a member of GOGMI. I was privileged to be part of the 2025 cohort of the Nippon Foundation Fellowship which is organized by DUALOS, United Nations Division of Law of the Sea and Ocean Affairs. Every year, so a little bit about the program. Every year, the DUALOS, or the Division of Ocean Affairs and Law of the Sea, gathers about 14 naval professionals from all around the world to undergo capacity building at the UN headquarters for 3 months. And then after that, there is a 6 months training, which is done at a partner institution or a partner university. And I did my phase at the Maritime Law Institute in Malta. So today I'm here to present my research paper, which I conducted whilst I was on the fellowship. And my topic or my research was on optimizing maritime security for sustainable economic development. And my aim was to propose a strategic framework for the Gulf of Guinea. So because of low bandwidth, permit me if I go in and out of my video so that I can preserve the quality of the presentation. So let me begin by greeting once again our distinguished participants. My presentation begins with a paradox. The Gulf of Guinea is one of the most resource-rich maritime regions in the world. Beneath its seabed lies billions of barrels of hydrocarbons. Its waters contain some of the most productive fisheries in the Atlantic. Its sea lanes connect about 3 continents and also carry a substantial share of global trade. Yet, despite this immense maritime wealth, the region continues to struggle with insecurity, underdevelopment, and lost economic opportunity. For years, the international community has approached these challenges primarily through a security lens. So due to that, we have built maritime coordination centers, we have strengthened naval patrols, we have developed regional architectures to combat piracy and maritime crime. And to some extent, these efforts have worked. Piracy incidents in the region have declined, but the uncomfortable question that my research sought to answer was, if we have improved maritime security mechanisms, why has the region still not unlocked the economic promise or potential in its waters? And the answer, I argue, lies in the structural disconnect between security and blue economic development. So across the Gulf of Guinea, maritime security and the blue economy development are being pursued as parallel agendas. So you have instances where you're having conferences or events by blue economy sector of ECOWAS or ECAS or AU, and those from the maritime security sector will be absent, and vice versa. So this disconnect really shows that we don't really have a holistic plan of integrating these two competing priorities. Security actors only focus on threats at sea, and development actors also focus on the economic potential. But the reality is that these two domains are inseparable. Maritime insecurity undermines investments, destroys fisheries, and erodes coastal livelihoods, and erodes coastal livelihoods. At the same time, weak economic opportunities along the coast feed the very criminal networks that threaten maritime stability. In other words, insecurity and underdevelopment are not separate problems. They are part of the same system. So my research seeks to ask a fundamental question. How can the Gulf of Guinea move beyond treating maritime security as a defensive exercise and instead integrate it into a broader governance framework capable of unlocking a sustainable blue economy? This presentation explores that question and proposes a strategic framework for aligning maritime security, governance, and economic development across the region. So, bottom line upfront, at the end of the presentation, if you don't get anything at all, the message you should be taken back is that the Gulf of Guinea cannot achieve sustainable blue economic development without coherent maritime security. And maritime security in the Gulf of Guinea will remain fragile without inclusive economic development. So these are integrated agenda. They are not parallel, they are mutually reinforcing. So therefore, a single governance system is required to address these issues. Now, there's a structural gap. So the three main things we are tackling is there's a structural gap, the relationship between the two, and the solution that is required to bridge that gap. So the structural gap is that security and development have been conceptually, institutionally, and operationally separated, creating a governance blind spot that criminals and environmental threats or environmental actors exploit. Also, my research posits that the relationship between the two is bidirectional. That is, security enables economic development, economic growth, and economic growth funds and legitimizes security. So the causal arrows are both ways. One goes forward and it reverses back into a loop. And through the research, I came up with a bidirectional framework that addresses this. So we'll go into that during the presentation. And also, there is a solution that exists, or the solution to dealing with this exists, and it requires political will, and then the need to revitalize the institutional systems within the region. So we need a revitalized Gulf of Guinea Commission, which will serve as a regional anchor institution underpinned by legal reforms, integrated maritime domain awareness, and sustained finances to be able to close the gap that has been identified. And it requires member states to commit to these lofty ideas. So we all know these statistics, so there's no need to belabor the point. So as we all know, the Gulf of Guinea is about 6,000 kilometers with 19 states. It has about 4.5% of the world's proven oil reserves, and it contributes about 4% to global fish production. And there's an estimated $1 trillion of untapped blue economy value. At the end of the presentation, I'll share the paper so that those who wish to explore more can go into it. There are strategic shipping lanes joining the whole Atlantic, that's to South America, North America, and to Europe. As you could see in the US national security strategy, are pivoting to the Atlantic. So it means this sphere of the earth will be very important for geopolitical reasons, particularly in the maritime domain, as we have seen in recent events in the Venezuelan waters and adjacent areas. So the threats that are in the region include piracy. And as you may all be aware, the region was the epicenter of piracy around 2020. And then in Nigeria alone, there was a loss of about $300 billion between 2015 to 2025 due to oil theft. And this was in one of their congressional briefings that was made known. Also, it is believed that about 40% plus of the fish that is caught in the region, it's illegal or doesn't come from the right sources or has issues with it. And then about 35% of cocaine and drugs transit through South America, through West Africa to Europe. but there are a lot of fragmented mechanisms that should be able to deal with these issues. But because there are so many and they are well spread out, there's no consolidation and there's no unity of effort in dealing with all these issues that we address. So if we take the threats one by one, I'm sure piracy is something that is very symptomatic of the issues in the Gulf of Guinea. And as I mentioned, alluded to earlier, piracy was the epicenter of Gulf of Guinea was the epicenter of piracy around 2020, and it peaked with kidnap for ransom, which accounted for about 95% of all global incidents within the same period. It then evolved to nearshore robbery, from nearshore robbery to petrol piracy, where pirates would steal petrol and sell, and then it went further to offshore kidnap for ransom operation. And then around 2021, there was a geographic shift into Central Africa with about 62% of the incidents happening there. And this was mainly due to a lot of patrols, particularly by the Nigerian Navy and Ghana and other coastal states in the West African region. However, Niger Delta still remains operational base, and the root causes that underpin this insecurity that lead to piracy still persists. So, although naval patrols are important and they reduce the symptoms, the underlying causes still persist. And until those underlying causes are dealt with, I dare say that the issue of piracy may seem to have disappeared, but will still be lurking around to the opportunistic attacks happen, as we saw recently in the Ghanaian waters. Now, next is IU fishing. Like I mentioned earlier, 40% of all fish caught in the Gulf of Guinea escapes official reporting, and this costs regional economies billions in lost revenue annually. It also displaces artisanal fishers, it brings about poverty, and these people who don't get jobs or are pushed out of their jobs become easy targets for criminals to recruit. Additionally, human trafficking and forced labor are endemic in fishing fleets, according to some of the papers I came across. And if you read the research, you have access to some of these sources, and then you can refer to them if need be. Additionally, it undermines food security. Ghana and most parts of West Africa have a high volume or high intake of fish protein in their meals. So as IU takes place, people are poaching and taking these fish stocks away. It undermines food security in the region. Now, about oil thefts, most of these illicit flows that we mentioned about fund militia, insurgencies, and also it corrupts government officials. There are also illegal refineries that cause catastrophic environmental damage. These issues corrode fiscal integrity because resources that are supposed to be used for development are now diverted to deal with these security issues or environmental issues. And then through that, you have communities rising up, and you have insurgencies coming up, as we can see in the Niger Delta region. Additionally, one of the threats that is also very prevalent in the region is transnational crime. And West Africa is a major transit point for drugs. Armed trafficking also persists because of the cross borders. People are able to move weapons, they're able to move contraband goods, and then just ship all illicit medicine, drugs, and other things illegally through the region. Migrant smuggling is also endemic, and they lead to humanitarian crises at sea, and then navies are now required to conduct search and rescue operations. Marine pollution, climate change are also other threats to the maritime environment of the Gulf of Guinea. And most of these are orchestrated by human activity, except some natural causes that may lead or contribute to climate change. And also, most of these criminal syndicates take advantage of the weak governance lapses or systems that persist in the region. So the region does have a potential for its blue economic development. However, due to all these issues that we mentioned, it becomes very difficult to tap these resources. So a sector like fisheries and aquaculture has a potential because already it's contributing to about 4% of global production. So imagine if the 40% that is underreported is reported and it is done legally. It will add more, about 1.5% to this statistics to rise to about 4.5, 5.5 or even 6%. And then millions of people will get jobs and it will improve livelihood. The constraint with this sector is that IUU fishing is endemic. There's a lot of habitat loss due to coastal erosion and other environmental hazards, thereby displacing artisanal fishers. So these are some of the constraints to the potential of the blue economy sector within the fisheries and aquaculture, fisheries and aquaculture. So the next one is hydrocarbons. We know that most countries in the Gulf of Guinea, or some countries in the Gulf of Guinea, produce oil, and it is believed that about 4.5% of world oil reserves are in the region. And it is the economic backbone for about 6 countries. There are about 12 major oil production or producing countries in Africa, and 6 of them are in this region. So that tells you how important hydrocarbons are to the region. The constraint here is oil theft, pollution, price volatility, and then the fact that there's over concentration on the hydrocarbons to the detriment of other sectors of the economy. Another key area is maritime transport and ports. Here, imagine having deep ports within the Gulf of Guinea region, like we have in Singapore, where goods are shipped from the Gulf of Guinea to South America, to Europe, because now that I have a lot of crisis in the Red Sea, the Gulf of Guinea becomes a very important transit point. But if AFTA was working and we had huge potential, and we had deep ports within the region, it could become a major transit port in our sector of the sphere. So this potential exists. However, due to piracy and high premiums, due to these criminal activities and port congestion, and then low productivity or efficiency in the ports, this potential remains untapped. Another key area is coastal tourism, which I believe the region has not taken advantage of, because there are nice beaches. A country like Sao Tome and Principe depends a lot on tourism. And looking at how we have heritage sites across places like Ghana, with it having most of the coastal castles and other things, it should be a major hub for coastal tourism. Yet that has not happened. And this is mainly due to insecurity, as we've said, and then investors are afraid to put in their money. There's also a lot of pollution at our beaches, so people are not comfortable coming to swim at our beaches. And what's my admiral, former CNS of the Ghana Navy, says, is only in a part of the world that you see people building with their windows and their frontage of their houses facing landward, with their back facing the sea, because of what the sea has brought in the past, slavery and all these other things that we attribute the sea to. The last but not the least sector that I looked at as a blue economic potential is offshore renewables and emerging sectors. Wind, tidal, marine biotechnology, blue carbon credit. These are all new sectors that are coming up that the region could take advantage of. But there are no scientific bodies, there's no investment and all of that. And these things are not able to bring out this potential within the region. So we see that if we're able to invest, or if there's a lot of security, most of these preconditions will be removed. People will be happy to invest, and then the blue economy can be developed for the benefit of all. Looking at all these things, we ask ourselves that why have we failed to find a common ground to put all these things together? From my checks, we have over 15 plus mechanisms within the Gulf of Guinea that is supposed to enhance maritime governance. The UNCLOS and its legal frameworks exist. We have the Yaoundé Code of Conduct and its associated Yaoundé Architecture for Maritime Security. We have the Gulf of Guinea Commission. We have AIMS 2015, the Lomé Charter, Africa Blue Economy Strategy. We have the Africa Operational Governance Structure. All these things are there, and they are operating in silos, sitting in different places. We have CRISMA and CRISMAC also existent, with the ICC nearly dormant. We have the Combined Maritime Task Force for the Gulf of Guinea, the EU Combined Maritime Presence, Coordinated Maritime Presences, and all these this is for operational, operations. ECOWAS and ECAS are also existing within the region, and they all have maritime components that are working within them. You have the G7++. So all these plethora of mechanisms exist. However, they are doing almost the same thing. There's redundancy, there's duplication of efforts, and there's a lot of money flying about with little achieved. So here, there's a need to look at why or how we can possibly bring all these things together to make them work as a unit. So first, we identify a governance gap. We also identify a legal gap where arrests don't necessarily lead to prosecution. We don't have hot pursuit protocols across countries in the region. Most states have not domesticated key international instruments. Additionally, there's also the coordination gap. We have overlapping mandates, turf wars, donor-driven power structures, and a lot of other local initiatives that seem to either reaffirm or support existing ones, yet operate in silos or in parallel. And additionally, we also have a lot of capacity gaps where there's insufficient maritime domain awareness. There aren't enough assets for patrols. And also, most of the personnel in the region don't have the requisite training to do a lot of the jobs that are required in the Gulf of Guinea. So I came up with this theory of change, and I call it the biodirectional theory of change for maritime security and the blue economy. And here I posit that when we have secure seas, it reduces costs, lowers the risk of investment, it protects assets and people, and enables safe use of marine resources and services. And this is an enabler. Therefore, it leads to economic investment in ports, fisheries management, coastal livelihoods, marine infrastructure. So there is a cyclical relationship. And you have most of the investment done in maritime security inuring to blue economic benefits. And then you have blue economic benefits also leading to a secured maritime domain. So I came up with this cycle where blue economy reinforces maritime security and vice versa. There's a lot more in that I speak about in this biodirectional theory of change in the paper itself. And if anybody wants to read more and engage, I'll be happy to do that. So I proposed 7 strategic pillars, integrated strategic pillars for the framework that is to be enacted. And the first one is the need for governance and legal harmonization, having binding legal arrangements and domesticating laws within the region. The second priority pillar is maritime domain awareness and operation, where we have a regional maritime domain awareness hub that is locally owned. I know there are talks about handing over the Yaris to the region, but there are questions about who owns the data, who pays for it, and all of that. And somebody has designed it. Why do I have to now fund and keep it when the person still has access to it? So all those are issues that have to be addressed. But if we have a common regional maritime domain awareness hub, it could integrate the current Yaris, it could help with patrols, it could help with information sharing, and also help with the coordination of patrols and regions within the Gulf of Guinea. Also, the third pillar is safety and resilience. There should be a mechanism to help deal with search and rescue coordination, pollution response, port security, and on all these other non-defense aspects of information sharing. The fourth is human security and social inclusion. Coastal communities should be seen as an integral part of any architecture that is being built, because things that happen at sea affect them directly. They can become your first line of defense, your first line of information, and they can also help you deliver everything that you are doing. And there should be the need to include gender perspectives and the youth in all these discussions. Also, there's the need to look at financing and risk sharing. There should be a mechanism where we don't have to always rely on donors to implement our programs. There should be some of a fund which is financed through the Caribbeans have a very interesting risk sharing insurance framework, which kind of ensures that there's distribution of risk across the country. A country like Mauritius in Africa and Seychelles have come up with lofty ideas about blue bonds. All these things can be adopted and implemented within the region so that there can be sustainable financing of our initiatives or mechanisms that we put in place, or that integrated framework that we seek to build. The last but one is knowledge, innovation, and capacity building. There should be research and development. Now the BBNJ is in force, and BBNJ deals with a lot of research, but research is limited in our region. We don't invest a lot in maritime research. Most of the research that is done is funded by foreigners. They have their interests, and it does not inure mostly to our interests or our areas of focus where it benefits us directly. And then last but not the least, there should be a mechanism for monitoring, evaluation, and adaptive learning. There should be should be a loop where the mistakes or the lessons learned are fed back into whichever system to make it better. There should be monitoring and evaluation. There should be some form of peer review mechanism across the countries on maritime issues. Then we look at having an anchor institution. So I looked at all these mechanisms, and I thought that if we revitalize the Gulf of Guinea Commission, it could be the original anchor institution for maritime security and blue economy integration. And why do I think this would help? It is the only body that spans ECOWAS and ECAS, and there has been a revised treaty which is yet to be implemented, but it is modern, inclusive, and it includes all the instruments that are currently in force. And when it is implemented to include all the 19 states, currently the Gulf of Guinea has 9 out of the 19 states, coastal states and islands. So in actual sense, it does not even have 50% of the coastal states. So it lacks the legitimacy to deal with a lot of the things in the region. Yet it's the single organization that could deal with it, because ECAS and ECAS are part of it. And these states form the GGC. So it should be easy for them to cede the maritime interest or the maritime governance to the GGC, which would make sense. And also, the GGC could incorporate contemporary global frameworks to help make it a test case for other regions to emulate. And within 2024 and 2025, there are a lot of conferences that have affirmed their support and their confidence in the GGC to deal with maritime security and blue economic development in the region. And the recent one was the Yaoundé Declaration, where a conference was held in Yaoundé in late 2025 on the blue economic development in the Gulf of Guinea. So once this revised treaty is adopted, it will make the Gulf of Guinea Commission very formidable to deal with maritime security issues and blue economic development and consolidate both. So I lay out a 3-phase roadmap for this revitalization. And the phase 1, which should span between a year and 2, would be the institutional legal consolidation, where heads of states relaunch the Gulf of Guinea Commission after getting all the 19 countries on board. And then they adopt the revised Gulf of Guinea Commission Treaty. They establish an MDA hub and then a joint operation center. And I'll come more into this arrangement. They should launch the Gulf of Guinea Blue and Security Fund and commission a model legislation for countries to adopt and learn from. The phase 2 will be consolidation operational integration, where full MDA systems are operational across the region. Countries feed the MDA into one. We have a hub for information sharing, and we have joint operations framework where you have harmonized standard operating procedures. You have agreements across region on hot pursuit and all these things. Also, there's a need to operationalize research, and also have some form of legal benchmarks to guide nations, and also a peer review mechanism will be launched to make sure that all countries are on the same page when it comes to maritime security and blue economy discussions or discourse. And the final stage, which will be after 5 years, will be the integration and sustainability. So in this phase, the GCC should be self-financing. It should be able to integrate security and blue economy plans, and then even scale it up to help AU deal with its issue. Because the AU, for instance, has a blue economy directorate, but doesn't have a maritime security desk. And it's quite shocking to have this understanding that the whole African Union does not, for a continent that has been home to the Red Sea, the Gulf of Eden piracy incidents, and the Gulf of Guinea piracy challenges, and has a lot of issues with IUU fishing. It does not have a maritime security desk. It's quite troubling. And with this, we see that crime rates will sustainably reduce and blue economy investment would increase. So I spoke about consolidating these things under the GGC. I propose this framework to make sure that all these things we talk about becomes visual. So I feel the Gulf of Guinea Commission at the Secretariat should have a maritime security deputy secretary in charge of maritime security, somebody in charge of blue economy resource governance, who is a deputy executive secretary, somebody in charge of political affairs, corporate services, and legal compliance, and then somebody in charge of administration, finance, and performance. So all these would have sub-agents. Now, for maritime security, I believe that if we have the commander of the Combined Maritime Task Force working under the head or the deputy executive secretary in charge of maritime security. Then you can have whoever is heading SHIP, the deconfliction of all the various initiatives and liaison between foreign navies and other things, also sitting at our office. And then we have a regional fusion center. So all these people will feed into one office. So it becomes easy to plan activities. So under the combined maritime task, we have the ECOWAS sector for easy political and administration. ECOWAS will have a sector, and then ECAS will have a sector. Then under the regional fusion center, we'll have CRISMA and CRISMAC, also modeled under ECOWAS and ECAS. And then under them, we scrap the MMCCs because they are duplication of effort, spending a lot of money. As are now, none of them is fully operational as the requisite staff. And we've seen that it's taken 10 years and nothing has really come up. So we scrap it so that the CRISMA deals with countries within this region directly, and CRISMAC also deals with national embassies directly. So the same arrangement or similar arrangements are there for the other departments that have been proposed. And this is my proposal. It could be looked at and polished. The GGC could take it up and see if this works or not. And I would encourage people to critique it so that we come up with something that works that we could use in the region. So there are a few policy recommendations that I make. And the first is, and it's all in line with the earlier phases that I mentioned earlier, I brought up in my presentation. First, there should the political mandates. Second, we should launch the fund. And the third, we should operationalize the MDN operations. Sorry, first is political mandate. Second, we adopt the revised treaty. Third, launch the fund. We make sure legal finish is incorporated within, is legislated within countries, member states, and there's some support system to help develop maritime laws or legislation across the region. And then also operationalize the MDN and operations, and then launch the knowledge architecture, which has been proposed. More details of all of these are in the paper itself. So for coastal states, we need coastal states to start thinking about maritime security strategies, blue economy strategies. They need to come up with these things, and they should feed into the ECOWAS and then ECAS integrated strategies, and up to the AU blue economy strategy, and then security strategies. GGC and regional organizations also have a part to play. They should move from all these declaratory communiques that we've been having over and over again with no action on the ground to actually making sure that the words they profess come into reality with operations guidance, with most of these things becoming a reality. There are a lot of declarations that have been made since God knows how long, but few have been materialized. So there is a need to move beyond the rhetoric. And then external partners should support most of these things that we do regionally and not set up para systems that will compete with our interests. The coastal communities should be incorporated in any plans that we do. They have a role to play. The navies and then personnel also make sure that kinetic operations happen alongside blue economy programs, and there should be an understanding of the end game or the other aspects of the blue economy. Lawrence, I have about 2 slides more, so don't worry, I'll finish soon. Yes, and then there's a role for academics and researchers as well. So as we move on to the next phase, which will be the discussions, I came up with some questions or suggestions that could guide our deliberations, and this is for all of us. And the first one is that is revitalize Gulf of Guinea Commission with politically feasible, or will sovereignty concerns and donor dependence continue to prevent the institutional consolidation of regional needs? The Combined Maritime Task Force and the EU CMP operate outside the architecture. Now, this undermines regional ownership, or is foreign naval presence a pragmatic necessity given the current capacity gaps? 3, legal finish. The ability to arrest and prosecute remains the weakest link. So without it, all security investments, it's nothing. So what will it realistically take to fix it? The fourth question is that blue economy frameworks globally assume a baseline, and this is what I found, that most blue economy frameworks in Asia and in Europe, because they have secure seas, they assume a baseline level of maritime safety. So maritime security considerations are absent. So is it necessary for a region like the Gulf of Guinea to define its own blue economy framework that would have maritime security very prominent in it? So that's another question we need to ask ourselves. And if coastal communities are both the first victims and the first line of defense, why do virtually all existing frameworks treat them as beneficiaries rather than architects of maritime governance? So in conclusion, the Gulf of Guinea's future will be determined by how much we invest in it as a body, how much we understand the issues we have as a region, so that we can move the theater from it being a place of endemic insecurity to a global reference point for integrated maritime governance. And here it requires political will, binding frameworks, inclusive governance, sustained financing, and adaptive institutions. So I leave the bidirectional theory of change here for those who want to have a look at it again. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity, and I'm available to have further discussions on the topic. I thank you. Lawrence.
Thank you very much, Commander Doju, for that insightful presentation. And key message from your research, which I believe will be ringing in the ears of our participants today, is the fact that institutional practice of maritime governance across the region is very much fragmented, and we need to mainstream maritime security as part of the sustainable blue economy in a way that every activity that is undertaken in or under the sphere of maritime security is towards the sustainable development of the region's blue economy. So thank you very much for that insightful presentation. We have the next 20 minutes to take some questions and some views, and then we can wrap up for today. So I'll now open the floor for questions, comments on the research. Thank you. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat box and I'll read them. If you want to make any comments, please raise your hand and I'll call on you to do that. Let me also kindly remind everyone that we will share as Commander Dodu has mentioned, we will do well to share the paper for those that are interested in reading more to understand the issues. I think there's one question from Lloyd Austin. He's asking if there is any mention of the African Union being a part of this undertaking.
Yeah, thank you very much. So yes, the African Union has a part to play, but the research was focused mainly on the Gulf of Guinea. We are trying to work from the whole to the part. So we looked at AU frameworks. We spoke about the AU Blue Economy Strategy. The paper looked at a lot of the frameworks within the AU space, the Charter and all of that. But then it kind of tried to get what we would need out of that for the Gulf of Guinea, because it was not a paper that looked at the entire continent. It looked at integrating it at the regional level. But then once that is done, it can be replicated continental. One other aspect I forgot to mention was that even with the combined maritime task force that we are saying, I was asking myself that why can't we let it be the naval component of the African Union standby force? Why should we have a combined maritime task force and then we have an AU? Unfortunately, I didn't find any maritime component of the. But I couldn't get a document on the African standby force, and then I couldn't find anywhere that there was a maritime component. So this could be an interesting aspect where the CMTF is now seen or taken as the maritime arm of the AU's standby force, and that could replicate in East Africa, Southern Africa.
Hello, can I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
Please go ahead.
Okay, my name is Rui Ribeiro. I'm in 2 Device at the same times because in my PC I have a problem with the microphone. So this is the reason I use my mobile phone. So I'm Rudy Beira. I'm in Portugal, in Lisbon in particular. I am a member of the I am a member of the Observatory of the Ecosystems and Digital Infrastructures. So one of the subjects is part of our concern and discussions is the submarine cables. Okay, so in your presentations, I never see some things about of the submarine cables. In any case, in for damages, for maintenances, and includes for the safety and security, of course. So I would like to know because, as you know, in Gulf of Guinea, across many cables to connect the different counts along of the Africa coast and the Europe and include in American continent, South, Medium, and in North. So regarding this digital infrastructure, why you think about the needs to include in the defense and security of these infrastructures? Okay, can you clarify, please?
Okay.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much. I think undersea cables form part of critical maritime infrastructure, and the need to protect them, it's as important as sending ships at sea for patrols against piracy or anything of the sort. Um, it's also a key part of the blue economy because you realize that communications um, and then other hydrocarbons, all these things are important for the blue economy. So it brings the research into perspective because if this is a critical part of the blue economy, there is a need to protect them. So it's not isolated from maritime security functions. The two need to go hand in hand. So it reinforces my argument that whatever considerations you are making in maritime security, because a lot of undersea cables land in various coastal regions in the region, but there are no agreements whatsoever in most instances with navies, maritime authorities, and all of that for the protection of these cables. Most of these cables belong to foreign entities, Google, Amazon, and other things. And then, as much as they are serving our countries, there should be a framework where there's policing and guiding of these critical infrastructure. Debates have come up as to whether the state should be responsible for protecting this critical marine infrastructure or individual entities should do it. The issue is if the states don't protect it and there's a cut in the fiber cables, the states suffer. But then these private entities are making profits out of it. So there is a dichotomy here. But having an integrated system where you look at security as part of a function within maritime security and vice versa would bring this argument forward. So when you're even planning landing these cables and planning this critical infrastructure for hydrocarbons, gas pipelines, and other things, security becomes a key component of it because some time back, a ship anchored on a gas pipeline and it affected gas supply for Ghana and other countries. It affected the supply of gas. The businesses didn't get their money. These critical blue economy sectors lost revenue. But there was also a national security concern because the country suffered from it. So do we leave that aspect to the commercial entities or not? But if you have a body that is looking at this holistically, in each planning phase of such critical infrastructure, both economic considerations and security considerations would be factored. And there are aspects in the research that I spoke about how these arrangements or relationships should work hand in hand. Thank you.
Can I put just more share a project that we have now in Portugal regarding the blue economy? So is on way to connect with the new submarine cable with sensors This is why they call smart cables. So they will go implement sensors along of the oceans, but these cables go connect Portugal continental to Azores Islands, to Madeira Islands, and come back. So they create a triangle that everything can collect live data. So we can control, for example, if we have a heartbreaker, if we have a tsunami, what's happened in the middle and the surface in the floor. So they can, the university on the academy can collect information, for example, to understand what's happening in the fishings and all the information. So it's a new role that you need to consider, because this step of submarine cables, this is some things that can add a huge value for the EU economy. So everybody, not only the defense and the security and the armies, not so, but the academy, the science, can use these informations to the blue economy. So I don't know if you know about this project, because it's not is around 40,000 kilometers in the to collect in that information. So this is why you can consider you the future for different parts in the world, in particular in Atlantic Ocean. So this is something you I would like to share it in zoo, just to consider for the United Nations in the future. Okay, thank you very much again. Sorry for this break, Mr. Coffee.
Thank you very much for that. I think there's a question in there which says, did the research look at the economic value chain within the Gulf of Guinea? What I mean is how much wealth is generated in the Gulf of Guinea, what percentage comes to the states. And unfortunately, I couldn't go into that detail. I was limited in the scope and then the volume, the number of pages I was to come up with. And I think that would be an entirely or an interesting aspect that could be taken up. I think I would recommend it to the to Dwalo, so that current fellows who are there, someone could take it up. But there was this schematic, or there was this research that spoke about how much wealth is generated within the maritime space. It was just a poster that I saw. I'll look for it and share while we are speaking. And it's sort to talk about how much uh, funds flow out of the region, and versus how much people bring in. And you could see that there is a vast difference. There's a little investment and people reap so much gains going out. So there's a need for frameworks like AFTA to be operationalized, so that there's trading within the continent. If that happens, it means whatever we produce get used within our region. I don't know how many. There was conversation about having ships moving from Ghana to Nigeria. Ghana and Nigeria export a lot of things: coconuts, oil, a whole lot of gari, a lot of stuff. But why hasn't it been possible for us to use vessels to transport these things? Thankfully, I saw that the Ministry of Transport has initiated such conversations. Although I did not look specifically into that subject, I think it's worth looking at in future research, and I'll share it with current fellows to see if anybody has an interest of picking it up. Or Gogmi could take it up as a project and work on it. And Lord Austin mentioned that there's a section, if you could read it and take it over from me.
I think Professor Jeffrey has a question as well. If you could speak now, yeah.
Commander Kofi, thank you so much for the presentation. I very much enjoyed it. I just have two things. One is more of a statement. The other is a question. I worked as a maritime advisor at the African Union through our U.S. mission in Addis Ababa way back in 2009 and 2011, when the AIM 2050 was in the process of being developed. One of the things that I found that the maritime sector was positioned to be in the peace and security pillar, but that did not go well with the other pillars. They felt that the maritime sector needed to have relevance across the other various pillars at the African Union. So it was kind of removed from the peace and security pillar, which made sense, and then put into the Office of Legal Affairs, which kind of got lost its way a bit. So the issue that I have here is that it needs to be brought back into the peace and security pillar if it's going to work in the Africa um, standby force model. Until then, I think it's going to be very difficult, just be at the appetite at the African Union. So hopefully that will take place. My question for you, Kofi, has to do with the Combined Maritime Task Force. I notice in your command and control diagram or your organization diagram that it sits under a maritime security secretariat. Um, I realize the CMTF is operational. So when I look at the rest of the diagram, I see that CRESMAO, CRESMAC, and the maritime operation centers are positioned nicely. But why is the CMTF under the under this? It seems like an administrative arm when it needs to be more positioned with the national mocks and with the CRESMAO and CRESMAC. Is the intent that the CMTF is going to do the planning, the executing, all the mission sets? Who is going to oversee that? I guess that's where it comes from, because the CMTF is more of a operational tactical arm, but who's going to do the higher operational planning and execution for that particular that group, because they are conducting the operations at sea. Thank
Right.
you.
So more. So let me answer that. I see Admiral's hand up so that Admiral can also share his points. So Jeff, what I sought to do was that I realized that currently there's no maritime security secretariat office within the commission, but you have it being increasingly taxed with the Yaoundé architecture, which has a lot of security components. So what I said was, let's have somebody like a Rear Admiral who is working in the office responsible for maritime security, and just as you have for your Coast Guard, in times of defensive work, that CMTF, which is the Task Force for Maritime Security Operations, now transitions from a maritime security mandate to a defense mandate. It can just shift mandates. But here, it works closely with the shade, whoever is responsible for the Director General for the shade. Then you have whoever is responsible for the fusion center. So the thinking is that the commander works closely with whoever is coordinating operations with foreign entities within the region, deconflicting all the various initiatives, and then also works with the fusion center. The fusion center now acts as an intelligence arm of the whole security architecture. It feeds into the operations. So the Combined Maritime Task Force is the operational arm. It has the platforms and all of that, and it has two sectors. And you have the same sectors for CRISMA and CRISMA, which is mainly information sharing. As whether or not they sit in the same headquarters for burden sharing and resource mobilization and all of that, that is another question. But then they all have to be in different cells so that one is providing the intelligence, one is building a maritime picture, one is constantly at sea, and it's getting information from these maritime operation centers. Now, CRISMAC can coordinate or work directly with the MOCs. This sector is the ECOWAS sector and ECA sector can pull countries from wherever they need. You can have two countries vessels being on duty in the region. If they have the capacity to patrol the whole region, so be it, they do it. They have drones, they have maritime patrol aircrafts, and they do all of that. Then they have a rich maritime picture being fed in, whether through satellite, over the horizon radars or other things, from the fusion centers or the MOCs at the regional level, which may have more equipment or more sensors, and then can also take feed from the original MOCs. So this way they become reinforcing. But then the shade also sits in the middle to deconflict any issues that might come up with foreigners coming in and out and all of that. So that's the thinking behind it.
Thank you, Kofi. I appreciate it. I look forward to talking more concerning this in the future.
All
Thank
right,
you again.
Thank you. Thank you. Admiral said,
Admiral, yes.
Lord, I see your pulse and your hand. I'll come to you shortly. Thank you. Admiral said, Lawrence.
Yes,
I
Admiral.
want to take over your job,
Yes.
so I hand it back to you.
Admiral, please, you have the floor now. Maybe Lloyd, you could come in, and then when the Admiral is ready.
The time has run out.
Can you hear me?
Okay,
Right.
we'll take the last question from Lloyd, so we can
Yes,
wrap
can
up.
you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, regards to I think it's Jeff's question and to Kofi's question, that as far as the responsibility, since it's in international waters and the African Union was created to be the vanguard, wouldn't it fall under peace and security? Wouldn't it go back to the office? And then, because I know they don't have a maritime division, and I've been throwing that out there for some time and gaining momentum, but it needs to fall to the African Union. This way, there's no violation of sovereignty of state for this country or that country. And because it's international, and most of the countries, most of the coastal nations don't have the capacity to apprehend, chase, prosecute, whatever, what have you.
Yeah. So a quick point on that. Because we frame maritime security mainly as a security issue, we fail to see the other aspect. And that's one of the key things I was seeking to address. If you put maritime domain activities or maritime affairs within peace and security, what happens to the blue economy? What happens to all the other sectors? What happens to maritime transport? What happens to all the other sectors within the maritime space? So it needs to be seen as a cross-cutting directorate or department or entity that works with environmental, whatever, peace and security, and they draw on them as and when they require. So it can be an encompassing body, but it has a maritime security unit, it has a blue economy unit. So it should be able to work with all the other sectors, but it should not be pushed under one. Because if you push it under peace and security, AU IBA sees that it has nothing to do with it. So it sits in Kenya, and then this sits somewhere, and they do, and that is what is happening now. Unfortunately, we don't really have the presence of a Maritime Affairs Office at the AU for my checks. So if that becomes institutionalized, then it could have tentacles working with all these peace and security, AU IBA, and all the other aspects. Thank you.
And I'd like to add, Lloyd, that that was proposed over the last decade, and for some reason, it just can't get traction across the pillars that there's going to be one maritime office, and it just has never transpired. So it's unfortunate, but that's why I think maybe it should reside in peace and security, because it is a way to support the APSA and the standby force. But that's just one opinion. Thank you.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right, because it started there. But see, like when most of the crimes they take place in international waters. The pirates go out to international waters because they know, one, there's no coastal country that'll pursue them, and two, if they get caught, there's nobody to prosecute them. So that's why it needs to, like we all agree, fall under the African Union, since that's what they were created for. And then we just work from the top down instead of the bottom up.
Around, if you're online, I think your hand was up.
Okay. From here.
Yes. I think the Admiral will want to make a comment. Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, and well done, Kofi, for a great presentation. And we have followed you throughout the research period. And Gulf of Guinea Maritime Institute is very proud to be associated with the work and with you. So thank you so much. And my comment had to do with your emphasis on the role of the Gulf of Guinea Commission. And that is critical. As you are aware, you and I, when our president was chairman of GGC, we worked a lot with the GGC Secretariat in trying to solve some of these issues you have raised. First of all, amending the treaty to allow all 19 countries to become members, and also to seed the issues of maritime security and related issues, maritime governance in general, to the GGC. As we know, ECOWAS are so much land focused, and they're overwhelmed even with what is happening on land. So to add the maritime security issues, it seemed a bit too much for them. So we thought that GGC would have been in a better position because their area of operation covers the entire Gulf of Guinea. So there will even not be any gaps if GGC is to be the governing authority at the political level for maritime security in the Gulf of Guinea. I think it is not all lost yet. A lot of work was done. Consultants were contracted, they did their work, and it is still our hope that this will happen. I want to also comment on what Lloyd said. Lloyd, thank you so much. You have been very, very active in what's happening in African maritime issues. And I know how passionate you are. And I perfectly agree with you that this should be taken at the African Union level. If we have African maritime domain, and we have it in the AIMS 2050, the African Integrated Maritime Strategy 2050, creates the African maritime domain. So when we do it that way, and we do it, I mean, we all agree, all the countries agree to keep it as a single entity. Then it means that when there are issues in Angolan waters, STP waters, a ship from South Africa can sail and go and resolve the issue without talking about, sovereignty issues and all that. So these are some things, conversations that we would keep engaging you with. So thank you so much. We'll come up with a report of this IMSWG, and then we can take the conversation through that. So Kofi, well done again. Thank you so much. And thank you to all the participants. Prof. Jeff Lansman, thank you for your excellent insights, and to everyone who has made time to participate. We thank you very much. We will continue the conversation after the report is out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Admiral, and thank you once again to all participants for staying with us. Unfortunately, we ran out of time, but we will keep the conversation going. Please follow us on our social media platforms. We have the International Maritime Security Working Group. Please send a request if you are not a part of it so we can continue the conversation there. We also have our upcoming capacity building programs on maritime governance for the Gulf of Guinea region and marine casualty investigation as well. So we'll send all these details out through our newsletter, and please stay in touch. We hope to convene again to discuss this and many other issues. And thank you once again, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lawrence.
Thank you, Commander, Admiral. Jeff, I look forward to having this again. This was very informative.